Okay, so I have my microphone on this time, which I didn't have for when I just tried to record this video. And of course, I didn't realize for quite a long time, but I'm here. I said I was going to talk about basically more UFO stuff and kind of my take on a lot of it. And I don't want to dive into too many different theories, but I am going to show you some of one of my favorite UFO videos, and I'm gonna say one of the most popular UFO videos. I'm just gonna kind of talk about what I think, and I'm happy to if people send me stuff or things I haven't seen before, I'm happy to watch it and analyze it and tell you what I think about it. Um, can you see it? I mean, does this big red arrow? Do you need that? Right? I mean, I found this kind of funny. I'm gonna go back to probably over here. Yeah, probably video 2 or 3. And because this guy, UFO Seekers, professional UFO hunter, he's in the desert. He's by Edwards Air Force Base. I've seen longer form videos of this. He is where he says he was. And he sees this guy thing flying around. I do not believe that it is a doctored video. It doesn't look like a doctored video. And it is something that is X-shaped. It does kind of, wiggle a little bit. And there's no explanation as to why it's flying around that we know. He's going on saying it's static propulsion, anti-gravity. Probably not. I can think of a lot more ways to get something like this to float around, not including, a powered balloon or just, fill it with like drone fans. It's not, it doesn't look like it's piloted at all. It just looks like a structure. So, someone's messaging me. I still really love this video because this video is a prime example of people see weird stuff. And they're not always, if not most of the time, they're not lying about seeing weird stuff. There is weird stuff in the sky. There's stuff that people cannot explain and do not explain. And not that it's not unexplainable, but the whole idea of UFO phenomena is, people are just seeing stuff. No, people do see things that are either there or they appear to be there, and we should listen to their stories. That doesn't mean you take it at face value. That doesn't mean eyewitnesses are exactly 100% reliable all the time. But people do see stuff. This is not something unknown. All right, so I'm going to actually full screen this to give you a little better view of it. So there's not really any audio. It's just them going, oh my God, oh shit. And then like creepy music interludes in between because you know it's authentic UFOs when they set the creepy mood, right? So I don't know why he lowered his camera there because that looked like a pretty good shot to me, but he did, and then he's going to struggle for a little bit, and you're going to hear them talk about stuff, and I'm glad it's muted because that means you go in with preconceptions. Let's see him film. It's going to pop out somewhere, and then I guess he's lost track of it at some point. That second video really is probably my favorite because you can see pretty much crystal clear that something's up there, something's moving, something's kind of doing one of these kind of things as it goes about, changing directions, zipping around, and it is silent. Or I should say, maybe it's not silent, but he is too far away to hear whatever the propulsion method is. And that's why he assumes it's zero gravity or whatever. Yeah, anti-gravity or whatever he called it, static propulsion. But it's not. It's likely not. All right, so this is basically, he's still framed but zoomed it in. What do you think that is? I don't know. In certain parts of the footage, you can see that like this is actually kind of an antenna. The top has kind of a white. At least the top. I don't know if the top was painted white or it was reflecting white. But it does look like there's like a two-tone, like the top has some sort of different material than the bottom material. That's what it appears to be. That doesn't mean that is the case. We don't know what's flying this thing around. Do we know if it's manned? Do we know if it's unmanned? It's probably unmanned, just by looking at it. Edwards Air Force Base doesn't seem too concerned about it because they haven't scrambled any fighters to intercept it. I don't know what it is. We don't know. And I love this video because if you just show it to somebody and be like, yo, I got footage of static propulsion, alien technology. I think this is an alien aircraft that the aliens are demonstrating for Edwards Air Force Base. And then you show them this, and it's like, oh my God, like, it's a flying X. Like, what is that? If you want to believe, you will believe. But if you're like me, who actually wants to know what the truth is, it's an interesting data point. It doesn't prove anything. It could be a flying saucer. And that really doesn't prove anything, because do we know if we can build flying saucers? We knew we built some weird stuff that was similar to flying saucers. We know the Aero car, and flying triangles, right? Tailless aircraft. Oh, can't believe that. And then those reports disappeared. Why did those reports disappear? Not the hover, 3 lights hovering. Those still have popped up. But the flying triangles, right? Those reports have almost vanished completely. And the reason they vanished completely is because, well, one, we're no longer flying the F-117. But two, everybody knows what an F-117 looks like. Everybody knows what an SR-71 looks like. Everybody knows what a B-2 stealth bomber looks like. We know flying wings are a thing. And flying wings were classified up until literally basically when they were unveiled. I guess that was where the F-117 was 81 or 82, and the F-117 was released. And the B-2 was, that was that early 90s, I think. B-2's, pretty new, all things considered as well. Flying wings have been around since the 40s. We didn't talk about them, particularly because, a lot of it was captured German tech. But the flying wing is nothing new. But before it became commonplace that we know what the flying wing is, the flying triangles, that took, 40, 50 years for that to come into the general public knowledge. This might be something that, a couple years from now, we're just like, oh yeah, it's one of those whatever drone things. Yeah, they're annoying. Or they're cool. Oh my God, can you believe what that does? That doesn't mean it's static propulsion, The flying triangles that supposedly were unaerodynamic and could not possibly fly in our atmosphere without some sort of anti-gravity technology. It turns out you just have a powerful enough computer, good enough design software, and stealth materials that are still classified, but granted, are of this earth as far as we know. And now you have a flying triangle that wasn't previously thought possible. So is it possible that the X or the dot or the whatever, all these things that we're seeing someday are going to end up being something that we feel stupid for thinking we're off-world to craft? Maybe not, as the ancient alien guys would say, but we don't know. So I'd love disclosure, but you know what I wouldn't like about disclosure is if it was like, yeah, so here's all the black projects and aerospace tech that we're working on, and this is some high technology. Please don't share this now public information with the Russians or Chinese. I don't want that. So are you going to be surprised that Lockheed, Boeing, the Groom Lake facility, or the Area 51, or the Air Force, or the Navy are going to be super hush-hush about the stuff they're testing? They were launching, the X-47B, was it? Oh, no, it was the, whatever it was, the full flying triangle stealth drone that was launching off the carriers. They were using that for a while. That was pretty cool. They retired it for now. What they're going to do with the research, I don't know. But, JUCAVs, there's a lot of things that they don't want to talk about. That they utilize. The F-35, that could take off vertically. We knew about that, but if we had not known about vertical takeoff jets beforehand, do you think they would have been like, oh yeah, we're going to have this new top-of-the-line fighter jet that can take off vertically? It's not really a thing, Jet engine was much the same way, you see something zipping through the sky and it doesn't have propellers, it's going to be kind of scary at first until you know what it is, and you're like, oh, okay. This doesn't necessarily mean that this is off-world. Just because it can't be explained right now doesn't mean it can't be explained at some point. Flying triangles are a good example. In this case, we got a flying X. Now, this is probably the hottest subject recently. It's footage from God, I want to say like '03 even. It's pretty old footage. It's from early. I think the Super Hornet had like just been introduced. Like it's pretty early on. But it's a bunch of, granted, rookie pilots, but a bunch of F-18 pilots, Super Hornet pilots, who were tracking some crap, and it's hauling ass below them, and it's hauling ass over the water. Now, they had different estimates about what the altitude was. That may or may not be accurate, even if the sensor is saying it's one thing. That doesn't mean that actually that is the case. But
yeah, on, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
120 knot wind? That seems pretty high.
That's not our LNS, though, is it? It's not. It is an LNS, man. Well, if there's a thing, it's rotated.
All right. So here's something about this video that people, they don't like to talk about. And they should talk about, because it's the only way you're going to get a credible answer for what this thing is. See this rotation? You see this type of essentially heat signature reflect, because this is a reflection of whatever the heat signature is. It's black hot. Sometimes you see he flips it and it's white hot. And you see this weird like spinny rotation going on. And you go, oh, the craft is it must be circular, and it's doing like a disc thing and it's flipping around. Not necessarily, in fact, probably not, because you will see this same sort of, especially something that's basically giving off a heat signature as a jet is tracking it, as it's changing its position relative to the jet, because of this. This is a targeting pod. I don't know if this is the one that was on the F-18, but this is what a typical targeting pod looks like. It's a thermal FLIR targeting pod. It's got a laser, it's got a thermal camera, it's got a lot of extra sensors on it. This pod is like a soccer ball that has a point, and it's looking at whatever the object is. And the object's moving, and the plane's moving, and it's trying to stay on it. It spins. Now, your screen stays flat, because, you know, you don't want the screen to be flipping around and stuff. But this thing is going to be spinning around. And when this thing spins around, since it only has one flat surface, that flat surface is going to be receiving the light, the angular light, differently every time it starts to rotate. It's going to be receiving angular light differently just because of the fact that the F-18 itself is moving. So this little spinny effect, you can see it on other footage of F-18s or whatever aircraft using a similar pods tracking objects for a long time, whether it's on the ground or whether it's in the air in this case. And that spinning effect is just something that I think these pilots didn't recognize because they were new. But that's probably what that was. Still, you see these bars here? That means the computer's tracking it. That means the computer, not only do the pilots think an object's there, the computer thinks an object's there. That says something. All right, that's not just it's not just an artifact or some sort of thing that's stuck in front of the sensor and then it looks like it's moving along with the plane. I mean, I've seen that where someone takes a picture and it's like clearly like something is like in front of the camera and it's like that's what you thought that was. I didn't notice until I developed the film that there was a UFO in the picture. It's because you didn't notice the, you know, piece of spider web with the gnat in it that's hanging right here when you took the picture. That's why that's popping up. And in this case, because of the fact that the computer is actually tracking it as if it's an object, it's also getting a laser range read on it. There's just a lot of other things going on. It's not just strictly like the screen's got or the camera lens has a blob on it. So something's here, or some sort of phenomenon is at least generating the appearance that something's there. Right. And then here's the other one. This is interesting. Locked it. So these guys are pumped. They saw whatever this was, and I've seen interviews with the pilots, and whatever this little dot thing was, it was hauling ass, and they spotted it on their own, and then they spotted it with the thermal, and then they were like trying to track it. They couldn't get the lock. He zips back around. Somehow the computer picks it up and locks onto it. That shows you how good our sensors are. Again, this is from over 10 years ago, but what is that? Turn them down a little bit. White hot to black hot. That's not the object changing colors. It's the guy flipping through the FLIR sensor. Now that's pretty steady, whatever that is. I guess the telegraph doesn't play the whole footage, but what is that? What is that? These pilots don't know what it is, and these pilots were not told what it is because the pilots have basically, first of all, they released the footage, and second of all, the pilots have said, yeah, this is some phenomena that occurred, and we've talked to other pilots who have seen stuff that is similar but different, but there's some sort of UFO phenomena over the water, and the Navy's looking at it. Are they covering it up? I don't know. If it's one of ours, they're covering it up. If it's not one of ours and it's the enemy's, they're probably covering it up. If it's something they really can't explain, but they think it's, a threat, they probably are covering it up because they don't want to, show their hand and say, yeah, China, you're sending these weird, fast little things that are tricking our sensors, and we don't know what they are yet. So they've got, good reason to be hush-hush about it. But, this is also, we're talking 10 years old at this point. Shouldn't there be, with the new sensors and stuff, shouldn't there be dozens, if not hundreds of videos like this of whatever these things are? If these are things. We don't know. We don't know. I would like to, again, this is the kind of thing that will age, and it will determine, essentially, whether its validity will be determined over time, whether we like it or not. Because at some point, if we figure out that there is a technology that we are using within the next probably 10 years still, that can simulate this, essentially, then we know, well, it was probably something of ours that was an early version of it. If not, maybe it's something unexplained. Is it a natural occurrence? I think because of the speed it's moving, I tend to think it's not. But it's not impossible. We might learn some stuff that we just don't know. I mean, remember the Foo Fighters from World War II? Giant formations of bombers, and they're seeing basically ball lightning and clusters and bright objects following them. And they report these things, and they were told, don't talk about it. And that, of course, creeped out the pilots even more. So then, now there's this legend of these Foo Fighters. Well, something we do know is that basically you get a large formation of aircraft like that, particularly when you're dropping chaff and all kinds of stuff, you get a really, really weird electromagnetic effects within the atmosphere by doing that. We've never had that large of aircraft in the air all at the same time since. I guess you could argue basically over Iraq, but not certainly bombers flying in formation and not at that speed, right? So you'd think the Foo Fighter thing, we would be seeing that a lot more often, right? We've seen ball lightning, that's been a thing. But the Foo Fighter stuff, we haven't really seen that repeated. And if that was really a reoccurring UFO phenomena, you think that now with more airplanes in the sky than ever, not in like formation, but in the sky than ever, we'd be seeing a lot of whatever that is, Why would alien spacecraft in little balls be following our B-17s and not be following other craft? It doesn't make any sense. So there's probably some sort of phenomena that's not probably fully explained because we haven't been able to replicate the conditions to recreate it. There's weird stuff in the ionosphere. There's weird stuff that electricity does. There's weird things in nature with the weather. And we can't explain that. This here, if this stops, if they never take a video of something like this again, we may never know what caused this. This may very well be a sensor phenomena. It may be something wrong with the computer. Who knows? I mean, it would have to be coincidental because the computer would have to think something's there to the point where the camera was actually showing something being there. But, this isn't color footage. We don't have a good idea of what this thing looks like. This, we can see, whatever it is, it's reflecting a lot of heat because as the pod spins, you can see this end kind of flip around. So we don't know. We don't know. I hope that we're not too eager to say these things are coming from the stars. We don't know. We don't know. Could be transdimensional. Could be, some people, they push time travel. I don't know how time travel could work in that sense. But that's easily just as likely as something coming in from beyond the speed of light distances. We don't know. I don't think As to say, if this is actually unexplained phenomena, I don't think that we would be able to cover it up for much longer than what we are. If it's not, or I should say, if it is actually truly unexplained, where we only have a hypothesis of why these events are occurring. I mean, has anybody ever gotten up close and taken a picture? You know? I mean, believe Bob Lazar, you believe they have the crash, but if you ask him, then he says that, he thinks they found them in an archaeological dig. And I think that's just as plausible as the idea of it coming from deep space and showing up. I think finding it in an archaeological dig is equally as unlikely / likely, because we just don't know. I will talk about my favorite UFO incident, and if you can't tell, because it's been in the tab the whole time, the Kecksburg UFO. Why do I find the Kecksburg one interesting? Well, NASA said it was a Russian satellite, but interestingly enough, everybody who reports seeing it all say they describe it the same. They say it's a bell-shaped object with runes on the side of it. They say hieroglyphs, runes. They're trying to explain what they are, right? Later, NASA said, oh, yeah, the fragments means it was a satellite that crashed. Well, that would be why the military would show up if it was indeed a satellite. That makes sense. But why do I find this shape particularly interesting? Well, I find it interesting because, and I can't even find the original photos and the original spec documents. They had that was online for a little while. But the bell, die Glock, here's an artist rendition of it, right? Whatever the hell this thing was that was in the I think the Black Mountains or whatever, the facility in Poland that the Nazis were using to test. They built weird stuff. They built they built this thing. What is that? There's some photos of it kind of hooked up, and they said, oh, well, the bell sat in here. Like, it's a weird looking thing. This was cleared out. This overgrowth has all occurred after the fact. But the Germans built this, and they were testing something in it, and, everybody says, oh, it looks like it's zero gravity. Yeah, it kind of does, actually, But what I find interesting about the Kecksburg thing is that they're just, the things that is described, this is what they are describing, is the Nazi bell, the Die Glock. And they're describing this thing. Let me find that rendering, because that was probably the best of the pictures. Whatever. Yeah. They're describing this thing, and is that like a model, I guess, somebody made? But like, that's what they like, they're describing this before this was like a well-known story. I find that fascinating. Could it be completely coincidental? Absolutely. I don't know what this is. You see photos like this, and you're like, is this fabricated? What is this? I think this thing was in one of the Medal of Honor games, had like a UFO. I think Frontline, it had it in one of the train cars. I think it's like a crashed one, and it's like shoved in there. I don't remember what the deal is. Creepypasta, Die Glock. There was some sort of thing that would look something like this, that the Germans were doing something with at their giant facility. I think it was nicknamed the Giant, right? There's 1,000 different conspiracy theories about what the Germans were up to, and every single one of them could probably be valid. Not every single one, but a lot of them could be, because I can't prove that this isn't what they were doing, because we have not, as far as we know, recovered what the object is, right? We found the facility. We found where it was supposed to be hosted. We found some papers talking about it, as well as some sketches. We found weird stuff like this. The hell was that for, right? That to me is really interesting. Does it mean it's alien technology? Does it mean the Aldebaran system taught them how to fly something? Oh, look, somebody comparing them. I mean, it's an acorn-shaped thing. I mean, it, some people have called it the flying butt plug. I don't blame them. It's kind of what was described. Yeah, lots and lots of interesting theories behind this. So I find it all interesting, but I'm not somebody who instantly buys into just whatever they need to buy into to justify what they're believing. New evidence comes out and completely debunks this. I should say, am I disappointed if this was a Soviet satellite? A little bit, but I'm not married to it. Part of my identity isn't proving that this was a UFO, that the thing they described was a UFO. But something like this, where it's like, we know this was an object. At one point, the Nazis either claimed to be building like this, they had this big secretive facility, they had all this stuff, they had whatever this thing was, and there's just like, it's so weird, and the info is out there somewhere, because this stuff didn't just disappear overnight. Either the Russians took it, or we took it, or the Germans hid it. But we don't know. So like that to me is, that's interesting. It's something that was, it's artifact essentially that was left behind, and we only got pieces of the puzzle, and then we get to let our imaginations run wild. This could be something really boring. They could be trying to build a nuclear reactor or something, or trying some type of crackpot science that didn't actually do anything, right? Or maybe they were trying to test a helicopter or something, or some sort of vertical takeoff jet. I mean, they did have helicopters. Not very great ones, but they did. They had this like weird double, almost kind of looked like an Osprey looking thing. And their paratroopers used it like a little bit. They just never really super widely produced it. I don't know. Germans did weird stuff. It's interesting. It's fun to be taken for a ride, but just know you're being taken for a ride. Let me see if any of these other pictures pop up. Yeah, the marking on this. Just trying to remember. Sometimes it's tough because there's so much like fake media on it. Like people, like this is a recreation, obviously. But Kecksburg Acorn. Yeah. Oh, look, see, they're actually comparing the two things. This is, but there's, finding the original documents is a lot tougher. It's kind of like when you see like these old black and whites. You're like, oh, what the hell is this? I don't know. Is that authentic? I don't know. Yeah, I love the story about the South Pole and the fighting, and the fact that the admiral committed suicide is really strange. But if they were that powerful, why did they lose? Wouldn't we be seeing stuff come up from the South Pole all the time? Wouldn't the Argentinians or the Chileans be dealing with this bullshit constantly? Because if you see that, then you have to believe in, either Stargates or Hollow Earth or some other weird thing. There's too many things for it. It's interesting, yeah, but it's also, where's the physical evidence? Oh, you say? Yeah, here's Flying Wing. Like, you saw that thing back in like 1945. What the hell would you think that is? It's a boomerang. There's a UFO shaped like boomerangs. Well, suddenly those reports go out the window, right? Let's see somebody doing that. Recreation. Let's see. Now we're just getting pictures of German bells. But yeah, that is not Die Glock. That's apparently the I do appreciate some of the effort, because they're not like, oh, it's got a ray gun. No, it's got like a Panzer flak cannon or something on it. I'm like, oh, that's pretty clever, because then it looks more authentic, because it looks like something they'd hobble together. But if you've got the ability to essentially defy gravity and accelerate objects at whatever speed you were just accelerating them at, why wouldn't you be using that to also fire projectiles? Right? If you could essentially accelerate an object and move it in any direction you wanted as quickly as you wanted, and have that have no effect on gravity, why wouldn't you also have a gun that does that? I don't know. Maybe that's not how the technology works, right? But yeah, like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what some of this stuff's supposed to be here. Yep. But it's interesting. It's cool. If I need to look at, if I get sent more videos or something, I'll check them out. I'll probably do a review reaction on the channel. But that's kind of where I am with a lot of that stuff. It's not. I don't necessarily, how do I put it? I wrote down some other notes here, like, what was one of them? It being these objects being transdimensional versus basically transgalactic or whatever. I think that's an equal possibility, and I think people shut themselves out if they are truly researching these objects and they think that they're intelligent, and then they just assume that it's not something either coming down from a higher dimension or crossing over from a dimension that's similar to us into our universe or something. Because once you start saying that, like, okay, I don't believe this object is human, but I believe it's intelligent, or I should say being intelligently controlled, you completely do a disservice to yourself by saying, oh, well, that means it has to be gray space aliens. Doesn't have to be that. Doesn't have to be that. It could be lots of different things. It could be stuff we don't understand, something we don't have a concept for. It could be something in the eighth dimension that we don't even have the brain hardware to explain, like what the hell we're seeing. Could be. Less likely, but could be. So, that's all.